Sakaido wakes up in a strange, unfamiliar world. Who is he and why he's here? He can't remember at all. All he knows is that his body is in pieces, yet somehow he can still control it perfectly. He tries to piece himself back together like a puzzle, but strangely parts of his left hand just refuse to fit. He wonders perhaps he was never meant to be put together in the first place. Sakaido proceeds to take a closer look at the world around him. Just like his body, everything is in pieces. Rooms, houses, streets. Not a single one of them is connected. They're just floating around as though gravity doesn't exist. As far as he can tell, he's the only person here. But then he notices a woman's legs dangling from one of the floating rooms. He tries to call out to her, asking if she knows anything about this world. But he gets no answer. Sakaido extends his hand all the way to her room and pulls it toward him. He nudges her, but still there's no reaction. As a last resort, Sakaido connects her room to his own. This time he decides to approach her the normal way through the door. Strangely enough, the door is locked. Sakaido himself manages to unlock the door easily, revealing a dead woman with a knife buried in her chest. All at once, something clicks. For some reason, Sakaido knows that her name is Kairu, and by learning her name, he finally knows who he is and why he's here. He is Sakaido, a brilliant detective who must solve the mystery of Kairu's death. It's then revealed that Sakaido is inside an ID well, a world created by a system called the Mizuhanome. An ID well itself is formed out of a person's subconscious drive to kill, and the one Sakaido is visiting belongs to a notorious serial killer known as the Perforator. In the real world, Sakaido is being observed by a team of analysts from a highly secretive police organization called Kura. Their members, Shiratake, Habutai, Wakashika, Togo, and their director Momoki, are collectively known as the Well Side. Inside the well, Sakaido tries to piece together the clues from his surroundings to solve the mystery. So far, he has determined that both the door and window are locked from the inside, making this a classic locked room case. To expand his investigation, he pulls in nearby floating rooms, connecting them to form a house. Then he enters another room, which looks like a study. Nothing about it seems particularly unusual. Meanwhile, rookie field analyst Hondamachi Koharu observes the Wellside team as they monitor Sakaido's progress and discusses the case with her supervisor Matsuoka. Their conversation suggests that the killer's method of killing is drilling a hole into their victims' heads, hence the name The Perforator. So far, there have been 5 victims. At each crime scene, the police have found the perforator's cognitive particles, which are particles emitted from individuals with an impulse to kill. Hondomachi asks Matsuoka if he's ever felt like being a brilliant detective and entering a well himself, but Matsuoka immediately shuts down the idea. According to him, only someone who is killed can enter a well, and even then it takes a special aptitude to be a brilliant detective. Suddenly, the Wellside team finds something interesting. Inside the study in the Perforator's well, there's a calendar that seems to be a gift from Fujita's Wares. The address of the company is also written on it. The well side then passes the order to Matsuoka to investigate the location. Later, Matsuoka and Hondomachi drive to Fujita's Wares building, carrying a device that can detect cognitive particles called the Wakumusubi. Back in the well, Sakaido comes across a room where a group of 7 people, who claim to be a family, are gathered. All of them are also in pieces like Sakaido. The Wellside members find out that they are not actually a family. Out of 7, 5 of them match all the Perforator's victims. The 2 others have been filed as missing persons. Suddenly, Habutai notices something in a reflection within the well, something Sakaido hasn't seen. He points it out to the others, and the moment they see it, a collective gasp fills the room. It's John Walker. Nobody knows his true identity, but he's appeared in the other wells before. Determined to uncover the way the world works, Sakaido begins piecing the fragmented city together. One by one, the houses, buildings, and streets are coming together. Interestingly, the gap inside the city he's created spells out the word Takoya. This realization leads him to a crucial conclusion. In this world, what's missing holds more meaning than what's present. Meanwhile, the Wellside members make a startling discovery. The word Takoya in the well matches the logo of a takoyaki chain, and one of its branches coincidentally happens to be located near the Fujita's Wares building. Matsuoka and Hondomachi pull up in front of the takoyaki shop. Just as they step out of the car, the Wakumusubi detects cognitive particles. Their pattern matches the perforator's, and the reading also indicates that it's fresh. Wasting no time, Matsuoka and the reinforcement team storm into the building, but they're already too late. A victim lies sprawled on the floor, motionless. However, they soon realize that he's still breathing. so they send him to the medical team. Suddenly, the city inside the well that has been connected by Sakaido collapses once more. This makes Sakaido think that the world should stay in pieces after all. Sakaido returns to Keiru. Unlike any other thing in this world, Keiru is intact and unbroken. If his hypothesis is true, she must have missing parts. Then it clicks. He calls out to Keiru's body, demanding that whoever is inside her come out. Suddenly, Keiru's body begins to move. Piece by piece, she starts breaking apart, and from within her, a new figure emerges, the killer. Witnessing this, the scientists prepare to eject Sakaido from the well, believing they've solved the mystery. But then, another figure appears, the 8th person. It's Hondomachi. It's then revealed that the person brought into the ambulance earlier was not a victim, but the perforator himself, Fukuda Tamotsu. He attacked the medical team and escaped, taking Hondomachi as his hostage. Inside the well, Fukuda, having just emerged from Keiru's body, makes his escape in a way unlike anything Sakaido has ever seen. As Sakaido attempts to track him down, John Walker unexpectedly shows himself. All at once, the wellside team locks their attention on him. Matsuoka becomes mad over the phone, accusing them of neglecting the search for Hondomachi. He blames them for not installing GPS on the Wakumusubi. Suddenly, Chief Hyura enters the investigation room, having overheard the conversation. He's come to say that putting GPS is impossible because it will undermine the secrecy of this project. Elsewhere, Hondomachi wakes up in a dark room, tied to a table. The perforator stands right in front of her. He casually reveals that he has several hideouts other than his known residence. Then he declares his intent to drill a hole in Hondomachi's head. But before that, he wants her to explain how the Wakumusubi works and how she found him with it. According to him, not many have been able to answer his questions after he drills a hole into their heads. Hondomachi is confused. She had assumed the victims always died instantly, but the perforator claims otherwise. Death by drilling is actually a slow process. A few moments later, after marking Hondomachi's forehead, Fukuda prepares to drill into her skull. At that exact moment, Hondomachi reveals everything she knows about the Wakumusubi. Then, in a shocking turn, she throws herself forward, pressing her head into the drill before Fukuda even reaches her with it. For some reason, a new ID well appears belonging to Hondomachi. It was formed after the Wakumusubi detected her killing impulse. As a result, Sakaido is forcefully ejected from Fukuda's well. He's now back to his true self, a real person named Narihisago Akihito. Now that Narihisago is back in the real world, Momoki orders him to enter Hondomachi's well. He obeys, and he enters another world as Sakaido, a dark world filled with giant drills. Once again, he doesn't remember who he is. But once he sees Kairu's body, he knows that he's Sakaido, a brilliant detective who must solve the mystery behind her death. This time, Keiru is found hanging from a tree. Below her is a note that reads, "This is a suicide." This just means there's no mystery to solve in this world. Suddenly, a giant drill appears above Sakaido. Unable to evade it, Sakaido dies and gets extracted from the world. Thankfully, before he dies, the wellside team manages to capture a clear reflection of Hondomachi at the tip of the drill. After analysing it further, they finally find out her exact location. Meanwhile, Hondomachi just wakes up after getting her head drilled. What Fukuda said was true. She didn't die right away. Then, for some reason, Fukuda thanks her. He says that what he really wanted was to see somebody drill a hole themselves, and Hondomachi granted it. As soon as he reveals that, the police enter the room to arrest Fukuda. Now that the mission is complete, Momoki visits Narihisago in the cockpit room to check on him. When asked if it is agonizing to experience amnesia every time he dives, Narihisago answers that it's fun to see Keiru. It's almost like seeing his dead daughter, Muku. It's then revealed that Narihisago is a prisoner who somehow became a brilliant detective. After finishing his job, he's brought to his cell where pictures of his dead wife and daughter cover the walls. Before he goes to sleep, he imagines the scenario where he puts down Kairu's body from the tree before she is impaled by the giant drill, the thing he regrets not doing as Sakaido. During his sleep, Narihisago dreams about spending time with his wife and daughter. But even in his dream, Narihisago knows that such things wouldn't happen because ever since he became a homicide detective, he was always busy with work. He proceeds to see himself standing in front of his daughter's dead body, listening to a report that she bravely fought her killer before dying. But that didn't actually happen either. In reality, a serial killer called the Challenger forced her into a fight she never had a chance to win. Nearly every bone in her body was broken. It was an agonizing death. A few days later, Matsuoka visits Hondomachi in the hospital. Fortunately, she's alive but left with a permanent hole in her head. Hondomachi is curious about what it was like within her own well, but Matsuoka coldly says that it's better she doesn't know. He also gives her a stern warning not to enter her own ID well. Basically, an ID well comes from someone's unconscious. so doing it would mean becoming conscious of the unconscious. It could cause a storm that would swallow the brilliant detective, causing them to wander in their own well forever. This phenomenon is called falling into a dogma. After explaining that to Hondamachi, Matsuoka notices that she's reading the news about the serial bomber called the pyrotechnician. She admits that she wishes she could help him catch the criminal, as she feels a deep-seated anger toward these serial killers. Out of nowhere, she asks if she can be a brilliant detective. Matsuoka acknowledges that there's a good chance she's eligible now that she has formed a well. However, he quickly discourages her from becoming one, as becoming a pilot equals suicide. Before Matsuoka leaves the room, he gives Hondamachi good news. They've detected cognition particles, so Narihisago can dive into the pyrotechnician's ID well. The next thing we know, Narihisago is back as Sakaido in a new world. He's standing on a floor that slowly rises up. Around him are 75 people, as clueless as him. They find themselves on top of a tower. It only takes seconds until people start getting shot by a sniper, who's hiding somewhere behind the waterfall. Keiru's body is located in the middle of the crowd. Upon seeing her, Sakaido feels that there's something wrong with her, but before he can come up with any conclusion, he gets shot and dies. Without hesitation, Momoki orders the team to re-inject him into the well. The analysts out that the people around Sakaido are not real. They think it just reflects how the pyrotechnician works. Who their victims are and what they wear do not matter to them, because all they want is to create pleasing displays using explosions. They work in a highly meticulous way. Similar to how the sniper is meticulously hidden behind the waterfall, Sakaido gets injected, shot and re-injected so many times. In one round, he witnesses a man jumping from the tower out of fear. In the same round, there's also a man who leads the other people to crawl in a circular way because he believes that's the best way to avoid the sniper. Out of curiosity, Sakaido approaches Keiru's body again, but just as he begins to think, a woman tries to jump as well, and he can't help himself to stop her. Just then, he looks down and notices something. Something that makes him believe that the mystery has been solved. The guy who jumped beside him is now right below him, which means the tower is moving. Keiru got shot in the chest, but she still spotted the sniper before she died. To help the others, she pointed her finger at the sniper's direction. Now the guy who was leading the crowd to crawl passes by Sakaido again. All this time, he's been the only one to proceed at a steady pace, and for some reason he laughs hysterically every time he passes a dead body. As Sakaido observes him, Sakaido gets shot and ejected again. But now the mystery has been solved. Out of the 75 people from the last round, 74 had their faces broken down and randomly assembled. Those people were soldiers, victims of a bombing in the Middle East 4 years ago. As for the remaining one person, he's none other than the pyrotechnician himself, the crawling man. It turns out that he had several procedures to change his face. Later, Matsuoka discovers that the pyrotechnician had disguised himself as a news photographer at the bombing scene. With this revelation, the serial bomber is finally arrested. In prison, he has a conversation with Narihisago. He explains that his drive to kill, or rather, create explosions, stems from the desire to capture the emptiness of modern humanity. He believes that there's no value in a person's life or death. In the end, people die all on their own, but Narihisago isn't buying it. He questions the pyrotechnician if the bombing 4 years ago affected him that much. From the way Narihisago sees it, the pyrotechnician was nothing more than a gawker who enjoyed the scene of other people's hell. And because he couldn't shake the euphoria of that moment, he kept trying to recreate it, over and over. In the end, his photograph is his own shallowness as a modern human. The pyrotechnician tries to deny it, but his words carry no weight. Narihisago has already seen the truth buried deep within his mind. At night, the pyrotechnician takes his own life in his cell. A few days later, Hyura orders Momoki to make Fukuda a brilliant detective. Although Momoki doesn't like the idea, he has no choice but to comply. As a trial, he injects Fukuda into 7 different wells, but Fukuda never lasts long in any of them. Sometime later, a girl named Kikuchi Keiko wakes up and finds herself in a cramped, enclosed space. There's nothing around her except a couple of oxygen canisters. When she notices a camera in front of her, she realizes that she's become a victim of a serial killer called the Gravedigger. This serial killer is known for kidnapping people, sealing them inside coffins, and letting them die a slow, suffocating death. That's not even the worst part. The Gravedigger also installs cameras inside the coffins to live stream the victim's final moments for the world to watch. Apparently, Kikuchi is the Gravedigger's 7th victim. So far, nobody has survived from the Gravedigger. Yet despite the hopelessness of the situation, Kikuchi announces that she believes someone will come to rescue her. Soon, Kura and the police arrive at the location where Kikuchi was supposedly kidnapped. Using the Wakumasubi, they successfully detect cognitive particles, Therefore, Narihisago is released from solitary confinement to dive into their well. Later on, Sakaido wakes up in a dark apartment. He sees Kaeru's burned corpse, and again, he remembers who he is and what's his purpose in this world. Then he looks outside the window. Across from him, an apartment is engulfed in flames. A strange realization strikes him. How could Kaeru have burned to death in a room with no fire? Suddenly, the apartment where he's located starts to explode. As Sakaido scrambles to escape through the window, his eyes catch a little girl trapped in the burning apartment across from him. Before he can save her, another explosion rips through the building and ends up killing him. It's been 7 hours since the gravedigger started live streaming Kikuchi. Yet, Sakaido keeps dying in the well and hasn't been able to save the girl across from him. Kura confirms that the girl is Kikuchi when she was 10. After many rounds of failure, the well-side team decides to let Narihisago take a break. As they wait, Wakashika wonders why cognition particles were only found with Kikuchi and not any of the gravedigger's past 6 cases. Shiratake says it's because the particles may have been blown by the wind. But Wakashika doesn't believe that such a sadistic killer doesn't have a few particles remaining at the crime scene. Finally, after more runs in the well, Sakaido manages to reach Kikuchi's 10-year-old self. All the well side members sigh with relief. As soon as Sakaido enters Kikuchi's apartment, Kikuchi hugs him. She says that the place is on fire and full of dead people. Sakaido thinks about Kaeru again. She was the only one other than Kikuchi who's in a place with no fire. This means Kaeru didn't die in that apartment. She was burned elsewhere and then moved there. In other words, the killer tried to use the fire to cover up the fact that she died at a different place. Based on Sakaido's findings, the Wellside team concludes that the gravedigger who kidnapped Kikuchi is a copycat. They used the real gravedigger's string of murders as a cover, hiding their own crime within it. This explains why Kura wasn't able to find cognition particles in the past 6 cases. Back in the well, just as Sakaido is about to bring Kikuchi out of the burning building, something catches Kikuchi's attention. She points to a man she calls Mr. Uno, who lives in the opposite building. According to her, Uno is a failure. He was so desperate for a fresh start that he set his own house on fire while his family was still inside. Hearing that, the Wellside team runs a search and uncovers a man named Genpei Uno. Without hesitation, the police are dispatched, and Uno is finally apprehended. At his residence, they find hidden stairs leading to a secret basement. The Wellside team is happy, thinking they've saved Kikuchi since she's still alive in the live stream. But to everyone's shock, the Kikuchi is found dead and rotting in a barrel. This means that the live stream was fake. It was just a recording in the first place. They're too late. And the gravedigger is still out there. People start swarming Uno's house out of curiosity. Amidst the crowd, Hondomachi's eyes lock onto a familiar face. She follows the man and then confronts him. He turns out to be Kazuta Haruka, one of Fukuda's victims who somehow managed to survive. Hondomachi expresses how glad she is to meet him alive. Kazuta remains silent, but then, completely out of nowhere, he kisses her. Without giving any explanation, he then runs off. A few moments later, Hondomachi returns to the car and tells Matsuoka what just happened. She has this weird feeling that Kazuta might be the real gravedigger. It's possible he didn't just come to Uno's house out of curiosity, but also to check the copycat. That's why he was so evasive. Hondomachi also noticed that Kazuta looked surprised when he gave her that kiss, as if he didn't expect it either. Hondomachi proceeds to lay out her theory. Naturally, when a killer comes face to face with an officer who might catch them, they would want to kill the officer. However, Kazuta kissed Hondomachi instead. This might have been caused by the damage to Kazuta's brain, which made him confuse the urge to kill with the expressions of love. Hondomachi decides to go back to the place where Kazuta kissed her. She scans the area with the Wakumusubi and bingo, cognitive particles are found. This discovery supports Hondomachi's theory earlier. And now that Kazuta's cognitive particles have been detected, it's time for Sakaido to go into action. Upon gaining consciousness in Kazuta's well, Sakaido finds himself plummeting through the sky. Below him, a tiny island with a single house comes into view. Sakaido lands there and tries to explore. Keiru's body is inside the house in a pool of blood. This time, it doesn't take long for Sakaido to solve the mystery. Keiru seems to have been killed by a single stab in the chest. But the thing is, this place basically has no gravity. In this kind of environment, her blood should have splattered everywhere, not pooled neatly beneath her. This means the killer deliberately spread the blood under her body. Sakaido kneels down, testing his hypothesis. He was right. Under the canopy of blood, a woman is hiding. Her voice and facial features keep changing. But it doesn't take long for the Wellside team to find out that she's the embodiment of the gravedigger's victims. They then conclude that Kazuta is the gravedigger and dispatch the police to his house. Back in the well, Sakaido finds a torn-up photo from Kazuta's final year in middle school. Determined to dig deeper, he explores the lower part of the island. There, he unexpectedly comes across John Walker, ruthlessly torturing Kazuta before shoving him into the endless sky. A few moments later, John Walker also vanishes without a trace. Meanwhile, the police are investigating a soy sauce brewery that's located on the grounds of Kazuta's family property. So far, they've found nothing suspicious, but as soon as they cut the power cables, gasoline starts pouring from the barrels. Then the lights begin to shatter, igniting fire. It's a trap. Within moments, the entire house erupts into flames. During that incident, Hondomachi and Matsuoka are visiting the home of Inami Nahoshi, Kazuta's childhood friend. Hondomachi tries to dig for information about Kazuta from her, but she gets distracted by Hondomachi's wound instead. They get back on the topic only after she wipes Hondomachi's wound. Hondomachi then tries to be more straightforward, asking if Inami ever dated Kazuta or if she knew who he was dating. Inami simply laughs at the questions and calls Hondomachi cute. Shifting tactics, Hondomachi asks Inami if she's married or dating anyone, but Inami says no. Hondomachi keeps prying by guessing that Inami must have had a boyfriend before. Inami admits it with a hesitant yes, though it seems complicated. Before she can further explain her love life, Matsuoka abruptly bursts into the room, frantically announcing that there's been an emergency, but Hondomachi isn't ready to leave just yet. She still needs to confirm whether Inami's unhappy relationship with her ex was because she was actually in love with Kazuta. Inami quickly denies it, though her reaction seems uneasy. Finally, Hondomachi asks one last question. Is blood coming from her wound again? Inami replies that it isn't. After this, Hondomachi suddenly gets stern. She accuses Inami of enjoying wounds and watching people die. As if to mock Inami, she also reveals that she's kissed Kazuta. Then without hesitation, she pulls out her gun and arrests her. Hondomachi has realized that Inami is the real gravedigger, not Kazuta. After all, Kazuta's urges to love and kill were never mixed up. The truth is, Kazuta committed those crimes for Inami. Hondomachi demands that Inami tell where Kazuta is, but instead she just opens her laptop and shows the videos of the victims, proving that she's indeed a gravedigger. Suddenly a knife flies toward Hondomachi. Matsuoka manages to protect her, but he gets injured in the process. It turns out that Kazuta has been watching them from upstairs. He's taken all the knives in the kitchen for self-defense. Without hesitation, he flees from their sight. Matsuoka quickly alerts Kura about the situation. In order to lure Kazuta back, Hondomachi orders Matsuoka to shoot Inami. Since Matsuoka hesitates, she decides to be the one to pull the trigger. The gunshot forces Kazuta to react. He jumps from the second floor and engages in a one-on-one fight with Hondomachi. The struggle ends with Hondomachi turning his own knife against him as he lunges at her. In Kazuta's final moments, he kisses Hondomachi before collapsing. After that, Hondomachi calmly collects Inami's cognitive particles as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, still in Kazuta's ID well, Kazuta somehow survives the fall, clinging desperately to a rock. He calls out to the girl who is hiding under the blood, urging her to come to him. However, she ignores his plea. Instead, Sakaido approaches him, attempting to understand what Kazuta wants from her. But before he can uncover anything, the wellside team abruptly extracts Sakaido from the well. Sometime later, at the funeral for fallen officers, the wellside analysts gather to discuss John Walker. They explore various theories about his identity, his purpose within the ID wells, and most importantly, how he manages to infiltrate each serial killer's well in the first place. Togo points out a crucial detail. According to her, Mizuhanome was built only a year ago, yet killers like Fukuda had already been active for at least 3 years. This suggests that John Walker may have had access to a prototype of Mizuhanome long before the current system was developed. With too many possibilities at hand, Habutai proposes that they narrow their focus to one key question. How did John Walker select his serial killer candidates? The best hypothesis so far is that he somehow found his way to Kazuta through Fukuda, but the exact method he used remains a mystery. Later, some officers are dispatched to investigate Fukuda's former residence. There, they find hidden mics and cameras, proving that John Walker had been monitoring Fukuda, and probably Kazuta and Inami as well. The next thing we know, Sakaido finds himself in Inami's well. He wakes up on a train where a trail of bloody footprints stretches across the floor, originating from Kairu's corpse. Without hesitation, Sakaido begins to follow the trail. The wellside team identifies the train as the local train that Kazuta and Inami used to take to their high school. They also notice that the people waiting at the crossing outside are the gravedigger's victims. According to the data, when Inami was 14, her mother committed suicide by jumping in front of a train, which is the exact train that Sakaido is taking right now. To make things worse, Inami was on that train. Sakaido continues following the footprints, walking straight ahead. However, he soon finds himself back in the same car where Kairu's body sits. That's when he realizes the train is looping. It forms a ring, not having a true front or back. As Sakaido approaches Kaoru again, a young girl suddenly calls out to him, saying that she's been waiting for him. She seems to be Inami at a younger age. After observing her, Sakaido doesn't think she's Keiru's killer because she has Keiru's bloody shoes. Any killer would have disposed of them. Plus, she doesn't know Keiru's name, meaning she wouldn't have any reason to kill her. Sakaido then takes a seat in front of Inami. Across from them, Kazuta sits in silence. Inami suddenly asks Sakaido if he knows when the train will reach the next station because her mum is waiting for her there. Inami and Kazuta act so awkward with each other in this world. When Sakaido tries to tease her by inviting Kazuta to sit with them, Inami gets annoyed. She says that she just wants it to be this way forever. The well-side analysts find out that Inami's mother jumped at the very same crossing where the gravedigger's victims were seen earlier. This means Inami is forever trapped on the train as it runs over her mother. And just now, the team catches a vague image of John Walker within the well. Suddenly, the well-side analysts receive news that Inami has disclosed the location of a barrel. According to her, she has no reason to keep them now that she has no access to the live camera. Later, she reveals the locations of other victims. Meanwhile, Hyura offers Hondomachi a position as a brilliant detective. Apparently, Matsuoka had suggested her for the role. Now that she has killed a person, she should have fulfilled the most important requirement. Hyura particularly wants Hondomachi to focus on solving John Walker's case. Hondomachi gladly accepts the offer. Later, Togo delivers a crucial report to Momoki. Apparently, the mics and cameras hidden in Fukuda's house match the items seized in a past case, which is the serial killer called the Challenger, or Katsuyama Denshin, the same man who killed Narihisago's daughter. Sometime later, Matsuoka does an investigation in Katsuyama's house. Upon entering, he's immediately reminded of the incident 3 years ago when Narihisago stormed in and shot Katsuyama dead on the spot. Even now, traces of his cognitive particles remain detectable. Katsuyama had lived in a huge mansion with a hidden stairway leading to an underground fighting arena. That's where he tortured and killed his victims. After Matsuoka gathers Katsuyama's cognitive particles in that place, Hondomachi is sent to dive into his well. As expected, John Walker appears in Katsuyama's well. Based on the information Kura has gained so far, there's a strong possibility that John Walker selects his next target while surveilling his current one. As for Katsuyama, the only people who had entered his house were his victims and Narihisago. This suggests a disturbing possibility. John Walker may have set his sights on Narihisago from the very beginning, so he orchestrated Narihisago's murder to push him to kill. Later, Hondomachi wakes up in Narihisago's well as a brilliant detective named Hijirido Miyo. The world around her is gloomy. People keep getting struck by lightning and die. The ground is covered in numbered squares. For some reason, Hijirido is handcuffed to Kairu, who appears to have died from a lightning strike as well. Elsewhere in this strange world, Narihisago's wife and daughter can be seen. They look terrified. Hijirido begins to question the significance of being tied to Kairu. If someone did this intentionally, who was it? Kairu couldn't have possibly done it because if that's the case, Hijirido would have died together with her. Looking around, she notices a nearby corpse and approaches it, only to reveal that the dead man is Narihisago's self from before he became a criminal. Hijirido thinks that Narihisago probably believed in the myth that lightning never strikes the same place twice. By handcuffing her to Kairu's body, he must have thought he was protecting Hijirido. In reality, that myth is false, but since this is an artificial world, anything could happen. To test her theory, she begins counting the intervals between lightning strikes and discovers a pattern. The lightning strikes every 9 seconds. Determined to save the others, Hijirido fires shots into the sky to grab their attention. She explains what she has learned about the lightning pattern and then unlocks her cuffs using a key she retrieves from Narihisago's pocket. Timing her movements carefully, she dashes to another panel that has already been struck, taking advantage of the 9-second interval to move safely. Suddenly, she spots something unusual in the distance. Something that doesn't belong in this world, a cockpit. The well-side analysts can't believe their eyes. Even more shocking is the text displayed on the cockpit screen. Well source, Asukai Kiki. Asukai Kiki herself was the Challenger's last victim. The girl Momoki rescued after Narihisago killed the serial killer. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Momoki immediately orders Togo to extract Hijirido from the well. But before she can act, Hyura and a group of investigators burst in, cutting him off. They're here to arrest Momoki on suspicion of inducing murder. They believe he is John Walker. Apparently, a body was found in Momoki's house. It turned out to be Shirakoma Nishio, the inventor of the Mizuhanome. Meanwhile, back in Narihisago's well, Hijirido has already entered the cockpit. The well-side team was too late. Now Hijirido has entered a well within a well. She can't be extracted, and there's no telling what would happen to her. Later, Togo, who has just been appointed as the new director of Kura by Hyura, talks to Narihisago face-to-face. She informs him that John Walker wasn't found in his well. She also breaks the news about Momoki's arrest. In the meantime, Wakashika finally cracks the pattern of the lightning strikes in Narihisago's well. The sequence follows the digits of PI. Earlier, they observed lightning hitting squares numbered 5, 3, 8, 6, 7, 1, and 4. That exact sequence appears for the first time at the 10,375,576th digit of PI, given that the lightning strikes occur every 9 seconds. That means the sequence began 3 years ago, when Narihisago's daughter was murdered. The analysts later go through the data on Asukai Kiki. It turns out that she's been struggling with mental health issues since she was little. At 18, she attempted suicide and was hospitalized. Later, she became an artist but was repeatedly hospitalized for 3 suicide attempts. At 21, she was kidnapped by the Challenger and then rescued by Momoki. Then she got hospitalized but disappeared 3 months later and hasn't been found. Strangely, on the night of her disappearance, the nurses in the hospital fell into a mass coma. The connection between Asukai and this bizarre incident remains unclear. After gathering that information, the Wellside team continues the operation to rescue Hondomachi. This time, they have no choice but to use Fukuda or Anaido to explore Narihisago's well. It doesn't take long for Anaido to find the cockpit, but he just passes by without thinking about it. Shortly after, he gets struck by lightning and dies. Despite doing more than 20 rounds, Fukuda can't get past 3 minutes in Narihisago's well. Eventually, the team decides to abandon this approach. Instead, they decide to have Fukuda and Narihisago enter Momoki's well together. Earlier, Hyura had instructed Togo to do it, suspecting it might reveal something about Asukai. The decision to proceed was then solidified after Matsuoka detected Momoki's cognitive particles inside his own home. A few moments later, Sakaido and Anaido wake up in a desert. There's nothing around them except sand and Kaeru's corpse. From the look of it, she died from organ damage caused by dehydration, as there are no visible external injuries. Sakaido notices a strange thing. A distinct sunburn mark encircles her wrists as if she had been wearing a bracelet or watch before. He quickly checks his own wrists and Anaido's, and it turns out they have the same mark. Anaido thinks that there's a watch thief somewhere around the place who must know something. He also notices footprints in the sand, likely belonging to the thief. Anaido insists they follow the footprints as soon as possible before the wind erases them. However, Sakaido still wants to observe Kaeru's body and prioritize deductions because they might die if they move around too much in the heat. Therefore, the two decide to split up. Anaido follows the trail, and Sakaido stays behind. After Anaido walks for a while, the Wellside team finds that the sun in this world hasn't moved at all. It's as if the time is stopped. Eventually, Sakaido abandons his position and rushes to catch up with Anaido. He has also realized that the sun is not moving, which means this world is not real, and there might be no exit from the desert. Just as Sakaido ponders this, he gets distracted by an eagle soaring above. At that moment, he slips down a massive dune and lands in a patch of quicksand. Sakaido starts sinking, but thanks to Anaido lecturing him not to move around and struggle, he manages to escape from it. Momoki is being interrogated for a murder he allegedly committed. His frustration mounts as he learns that Kura is currently exploring his own ID well. Outraged, he shouts at the investigators, demanding that they extract the brilliant detectives immediately. He tells them that it's a trap. Back in the well, just as Anaido thinks that he's going to die, the footprints stop at another pool of quicksand. A lifeless hand protrudes from the sand, suggesting that the so-called watch thief made it all this way only to succumb to quicksand. However, the real discovery isn't the quicksand, but something nearby. Just beside the quicksand, something else is sticking out of the sand. Sakaido and Anaido dig it out and discover a cockpit. Sakaido gets serious. He thinks that the watch thief must have intentionally led them there. Anaido also begins to suspect that stealing watches in the middle of a desert makes no sense. Once again, there's Asukai Kiki's name on the screen of the cockpit. Despite not knowing who she is, Sakaido decides to enter the cockpit. He orders Anaido to eject him after 10 minutes. Since Sakaido has Anaido with him, the Wellside team decides not to interfere and lets Sakaido do it. Somehow it feels like the Mizuhanome is inviting them. They also hope he can find Hondomachi if the well within the well does exist. With that, Sakaido enters the cockpit. Strangely, he wakes up at his own home, not as Sakaido but as Narihisago. He remembers everything from the desert, as well as his real life outside the well. But in this world, something is different. His wife and daughter are alive. He can hardly believe his eyes. As he processes it all, he remembers that he told Anaido to eject him after 10 minutes, which means he only has a few minutes left before he's pulled back to Momoki's well. Not wanting to waste a second, he rushes to his wife and daughter, pulling them into a tight embrace. But then 10 minutes pass. Nothing happens. Narihisago is still there, enjoying time with his family. During breakfast, he reads the news about a new victim of the Challenger being found. The year of the news is 2016, which means Narihisago is now 3 years back in the past. Narihisago is well aware that he's in a fabricated world, but even if that's the case, there's something he must do. Later, he takes Momoki to Katsuyama Denshin's house and casually reveals that he's the Challenger. Momoki, completely caught off guard, demands to know how Narihisago is so certain. Narihisago simply says that he's been there before. Upon meeting Katsuyama, Narihisago challenges him to a one-on-one fight. Fair and square, unlike before, referring to the time he shot Katsuyama. The Challenger accepts the challenge, but since the arena is occupied, they are forced to fight in the hallway. Finally, the fight begins. Katsuyama quickly gains the upper hand, breaking Narihisago's arm and beating him mercilessly. Bloodied and barely able to stand, Narihisago is left with no choice but to shoot Katsuyama in the legs. Even with an advantage, Narihisago struggles against the serial killer's strength. But then, through sheer determination, he manages to turn the fight in his favor. Blow after blow, he fights with everything he has, and in the end, he emerges victorious. Katsuyama is dead. Momoki arrives just right in time to save Narihisago, but instead of accepting help, Narihisago directs him downstairs to the underground arena. Momoki does so. There, in the middle of the arena, sits a young girl, all battered and bruised. It turns out that she's Asukai Kiki. She begs Momoki to just let her die before she passes out. That night, the hospitalized Narihisago visits Asukai in her hospital room. Upon seeing her, he immediately recognizes her as Kaoru. He attempts to ask her about the Mizuhanomi, but she genuinely does not understand what he is referring to. Instead, she inquires about the fate of the man who hurt her. Just then, Asukai learns that he's called the Challenger from Narihisago, and suddenly, Narihisago can see the Challenger from Asukai's point of view. Apparently, when Narihisago spoke the Challenger's name, Asukai was reminded of the Challenger, and somehow that memory was instantly transferred to Narihisago. Asukai herself doesn't understand how it happens, but her memories have always been projected to people around her. Suddenly, they hear someone whistling. According to Asukai, it's the man who's going to kill her tonight. The man enters the room, but before he can reach Asukai, Narihisago knocks him. The intruder turns out to be Sonoda Hitoshi, also known as the Facelifter, a serial killer infamous for peeling off his victims' faces. Sonoda protests, muttering that tonight is his turn. Narihisago hits him again, but this time the man vanishes completely. As Narihisago wonders where he did go, Asukai explains that he woke up because Narihisago made him feel pain. Furthermore, she reveals that Narihisago is asleep right now, and he's entered her dream. All at once, Narihisago jolts awake in his own room. His wife reveals that he's been asleep for 2 days since he caught Katsuyama. Later, he visits Asukai's room again, this time in reality. Asukai immediately recognizes Narihisago, confirming that the two of them did share the same dream. Narihisago asks her what Sonoda meant when he said that night was his turn. Asukai explains that each time she dreams, a serial killer appears to take her life. She's so used to being killed in her dreams that it doesn't even bother her anymore. Initially, there was only one killer, but then he started to invite the others into her dreams. Narihisago asks if the first killer had a top hat and a cane, and Asukai confirms it. Lastly, before he leaves, Narihisago promises to put an end to Asukai's misery. After that, Narihisago begins experiencing strange dreams, encounters with the Facelifter, and nightmarish visions of his wife's death. However, upon waking up, her wife is by his side. Narihisago asks her where is Muku. His wife responds that she's tired from going to the firework festival last night. Something doesn't sit right. Later, Narihisago visits Asukai to ask about the fireworks. He recalls that fireworks had been going off outside precisely 1 week ago during their shared dream about the Facelifter. Asukai explains that the killers who enter her dreams might bring fragments of future memories with them, influencing the world inside her subconscious. In other words, her dreams might predict the future. When Narihisago is back in his room, he starts reflecting on his own dreams. He thinks about the possibility that everything he had experienced up to the point he woke up in his own room was just a long dream inside Asukai. Some kind of premonition. That would mean the world he's living right now is the reality. Regardless, now that he's caught the Challenger, there are still more serial killers he needs to catch. Sometime after Narihisago is discharged, he and Momoki visit Asukai at the hospital. As they enter her room, they see a doctor performing tests on her. It turns out that the doctor is none other than Shirakoma Nishio. Once Shirakoma leaves, Narihisago informs Asukai that, thanks to her premonitions, he has already taken down several serial killers, including the Facelifter, the Tongue Terror, the Thigh Severa, and the Arm Twister. The only one left is John Walker. Once he is dealt with, Asukai may finally be free, but Asukai does not share his hope. She insists that eliminating John Walker will not change anything because her torment will continue for as long as she lives. Her condition is deteriorating, both physically and mentally. She feels like her mind will disintegrate, ceasing to be her. When she said she wanted Narihisago to end her suffering, she wasn't asking for justice. She wanted him to let her die as a human, to kill her. But of course, Narihisago can't bring himself to do that. The most he can do is track down John Walker and stop him. About a month later, Momoki calls Narihisago in the middle of the night, informing him of Asukai's disappearance and a bizarre mass coma incident involving the hospital nurses. He asks Narihisago if he knows anything about Asukai's nightmares, but Narihisago lies, claiming that he's never heard of it. He also informs Narihisago that 3 nurses who have regained consciousness reported experiencing eerily similar dreams as though they had shared the same one. Sometime later, while stopped at a red light, Momoki discloses that Asukai had been a subject of Shirakoma's research due to her mysterious abilities. However, Shirakoma has an alibi and no apparent reason to be suspected. Suddenly, Narihisago becomes distracted by a man crossing the street. He recognizes the man as one of Fukuda's victims. Later, he goes to the takoyaki shop in Fukuda's neighborhood in an attempt to catch Fukuda. But suddenly, as he walks, a woman tells her to stop. He turns around and sees Hondamachi standing before him. She's just as shocked to see him as he is to see her. Without hesitation, she asks him if he entered the well within the well just like she did. But Narihisago is in denial. He believes that he's living in reality. Hondamachi, however, is relentless. She claims that she only entered the world 20 minutes ago and the current year is 2019. Hearing this, Narihisago is shaken. If Hondamachi is telling the truth, then he's been trapped in this false reality for 3 years. Yet when he checks his phone, the screen displays the year 2018. The contradiction is so confusing. Suddenly, the world around them starts to distort and crumble. It appears that the 2 of them were never supposed to meet because the well can't bear the strain of the contradiction. Desperate, Narihisago calls his family and frantically tells them to run. But his family doesn't take him seriously. Then, in an instant, Narihisago's real memories come flooding back. His wife, his daughter, everything he lost. He realizes that he has to say goodbye to them for the second time. After ending the call, Narihisago turns to Hondamachi and finally tells her about John Walker. He is certain that there's no way John Walker is Momoki. Since the world has not yet fully collapsed, Narihisago plans to take Hondamachi to investigate John Walker further. However, he suddenly starts floating. It turns out that Anaido has been keeping his promise. 10 minutes have passed in Momoki's well. As reality slips away, he finds himself back in the desert, once again as Sakaido. Sakaido doesn't remember what happened while he was in the cockpit, but for some reason, tears run down his face. Almost instinctively, he recalls the evidence he gathered from Momoki's well. He realizes something. He quickly stands up, reaches into Anaido's pocket, and pulls out a small piece of fabric cut from Kairu's dress. It clicks. He and Anaido had been tied to Kairu's wrists as a message to stay close to her. But Anaido had removed the bindings. Anaido then draws Sakaido's attention to the corpse sinking into the quicksand. During that 10-minute wait, Anaido inspected the body and discovered something shocking. A photograph of Narihisago with his family. Anaido then reveals something that's even more shocking. He remembers everything from before entering this world. The amnesia function that affected Narihisago somehow didn't affect Fukuda, probably because he had lost part of his brain. Anaido proceeds to unveil Sakaido's true identity. As the realization sinks in, a violent storm appears around them. Moments later, it becomes evident that they are trapped in the shattered remains of Narihisago's endgame ID. Well, Narihisago is now falling into a dogma, a well storm. Sakaido, now fully aware of everything and the fact that he's in his own well, realizes that John Walker has been manipulating him too. Outside the well side members are unable to monitor or eject Sakido and Anaido. With no other options, they attempt to shut down the Mizuhanome entirely. However, the system resists, as if something within the Mizuhanome itself is protecting the well. The well side members begin to suspect that there might be a switch-up at the scene where Matsuoka found Momoki's cognition particles. Within the well, Narihisago is furious at Fukuda, but he refuses to surrender to rage and kill Anaido because that's what John Walker would want. However, Narihisago manages to figure out something crucial. Fukuda suffers from arithmomania. Desperate for relief, he had drilled into his own head, believing it would free him. But when he became a brilliant detective, the hole in his mind was closed, causing his arithmomania to return. Fukuda confirms all of it. Now the cockpit that had been beside them is gone, which means the Mizuhanome and this well are mostly continuing to update. Narihisago knows that his well had been entered by Fukuda before. Fukuda confirms this, and he admits that he even remembers every number in it as well as the map. With this knowledge, Narihisago formulates a plan. He asks Fukuda to take him to the cockpit location of the cockpit entered by Hondomachi. Narihisago is convinced that his own well and the well he and Fukuda are currently in are the same but at different times, precisely 3 years later. Meanwhile, back in the inner well, Hondomachi discovers Narihisago's hideout where he conducted investigations. As she reviews the data, she notices a pattern among the serial killers. Their methods didn't always result in death, and none of them had more than 7 victims. Hondomachi also notices one important thing. Each killer consistently killed on the same particular days of the week. It only seemed random because the victims didn't always die on the same day. Determined, Hondomachi later confronts Fukuda by herself. She presents him with a sketch of John Walker and asks if he has ever seen John Walker in his dreams. Fukuda answers yes without hesitation. He even provides precise dates and times of when he dreamed of John Walker, including one instance when he was passing out after drilling a hole in his head on August 15th, 3 years ago. In those dreams, John Walker led him to Kairu and invited him to drill a hole in her head. But Fukuda refused every time. He found no interest in drilling holes in dreams. Hondomachi cross-references the data and finds that no one with access to the Mizuhanomi system was officially off-duty on August 15th, 3 years ago. Hearing that, Fukuda casually suggests that maybe someone was simply taking a nap. This remark sparks a realization in Hondomachi. She considers the possibility of someone going on a business trip. Meanwhile, in the real world, Matsuoka returns to Momoki's house as per the well-side's orders. While monitoring, Togo notices an unusual photo and asks Matsuoka to bring it outside to scan with the Wakumusubi. Cognitive particles are detected. However, when Matsuoka takes the photo back into the bedroom and scans it again, the particles vanish. Apparently, Togo recalled that the photo hadn't been there during her previous visit, which means it was planted. Upon closer inspection, it turns out the seemingly ordinary picture is hiding a photo owned by Narihisago, the same one he had pinned to his cell wall. This suggests that the cognition particles detected by Wakumusubi were remnants from when Narihisago drove the pyrotechnician to suicide. Momoki's well never existed. It was just Narihisago's. Meanwhile, after digging for a while, Narihisago and Fukuda finally managed to find the cockpit with Hondomachi still in it. Within the inner well, Hondomachi has just uncovered the name of the person who had gone on a business trip on August 15th, 3 years ago. That person is Chief Hyura, and right on time after she calls Hyura and asks if he's John Walker, Narihisago and Fukuda eject her from the inner well. Upon waking up in Narihisago's well, Narihisago and Fukuda immediately tell Hijirido her true identity so that she remembers everything. Then once Hijirido regains her memory as Hondomachi, she tells them who John Walker is. After that, the 3 of them go back to Kairu. As soon as they stand near Kairu's body, their presence is restored on the well-side's monitors, allowing them to be ejected. Hondomachi wastes no time and announces Hyasura's identity as John Walker. Hearing this, Togo orders her subordinates to obtain an arrest warrant. However, before they can act, the Mizuhanome's main power is abruptly cut off. Elsewhere in the building, Hyasura enters a secured room. After entering a password, the ceiling opens, revealing Asukai, who's floating in a containment room. Moments later, she is seen walking freely through the building. As she encounters employees, she distorts their perceptions and makes them unconscious. One by one, the employees in the building fall victim to her world-melting ability. Their consciousness ends up slipping into other people's ID wells. Suddenly, Hyasura bursts into the brilliant detective's cockpit room and immediately shoots Narihisago. Then he turns the gun on himself, declaring that only he should be the one to end his own life. Before pulling the trigger, he announces his grand plan: to transform the entire Kura into a massive Mizuhanomi system capable of large-scale investigations. As he takes his final breath, he enters the cockpit, ensuring that he will live on inside the well as a brilliant detective. Narihisago and Hondomachi can't let it happen. They enter the cockpit before they become Asukai's victims. Before Asukai's ability reaches them, they dive into the cockpit to take care of Hyasura. Later, Hyasura wakes up inside the well as a brilliant detective named Uraido. It doesn't take him long to solve the mystery of Kairu's death, as he immediately notices a knife in his own hand. He was the one who killed Kairu. Upon realizing that, he laughs hysterically. At the same time, countless masks start appearing on the ground. By seeing those faces, Uraido remembers his true identity as Hyasura. It seems Asukai intended to trap him in a storm of contradictions, but now that he is dead in the real world, the well has stopped updating, preventing the storm from forming. Hyasura quickly senses Narihisago and Hondomachi hiding nearby and calls them out. He then picks up one of the masks and vanishes. Seeing no other option, Sakaido and Hijirido do the same. and in an instant they find themselves inside a serial killer's ID well. Meanwhile, Togo and the other well-side members wake up in an unfamiliar well after getting affected by Asukai's power. Strangely, despite knowing they are inside a well, Kaoru is nowhere to be found, and they still retain all their memories, as they discuss the possibility that they are experiencing a shared dream. Similar to the nurses in the mass coma incident, giant boulders suddenly begin rolling toward them. With no time to think, they all run for their lives. Outside the Kura, Matsuoka and Momoki strategize on how to free everyone trapped inside the well side. Momoki believes the only way is to bring Asukai back into the Mizuhanome. Apparently, this phenomenon has happened before, and someone had successfully managed to contain her again. Back inside the well, the three brilliant detectives enter another well, which is none other than Hondamachi's well. Here, Hyura reveals Hijirido's real name, triggering a storm. Sakaido is left alone to figure out what to do next. Suddenly, Fukuda enters the well as himself, determined to save Hondamachi. At the same time, Sakaido begins regaining his own memory. Later, Momoki and Matsuoka visit the hospital to retrieve the helmet Asukai used during the mass coma incident. The doctors refer to it as the prototype Mizuhanomi. Before leaving, they also seize a supply of drugs that might prove useful. Meanwhile, Hondamachi and Fukuda return to Hyasura's ID well, which is the one filled with hundreds of masks. Hondamachi plans to keep pursuing Hyasura, while Fukuda chooses to stay behind. Just as Hondamachi is about to leave, Inami suddenly appears and fires a gun at her. Instinctively, Fukuda jumps in the way, taking the bullet. As a result, he gets badly injured and dies. Inami then puts on one of the masks, transporting herself to Kazuta's ID well to see him. However, the moment she takes a step forward to approach Kazuta, Hyasura suddenly appears and stabs her in the chest, killing her instantly. In the meantime, Narihisago, now having regained all his memories, reunites with Hondamachi. Both of them get more determined than ever. They track Hyasura down in a well that has a giant baby and a sea of blood. Thanks to Hondamachi's surprise attack, they manage to get Hyasura devoured by a shark. But still, it's not enough to kill him. Hyasura emerges from the sea, his body casually regenerating as he moves on to another well. Narihisago and Hondamachi refuse to let him escape and continue their relentless chase across multiple wells. Eventually, they confront him inside Fukuda's well. After overpowering Narihisago, Hyasura sits down and asks where Fukuda is. He knows that Fukuda must be waiting to trigger a storm. After all, Narihisago and Hondamachi deliberately lured him into this well for a reason. Narihisago giggles. He and Hondamachi do have a plan, but Hyasura hasn't realized it yet. Then, after Hondamachi gives Hyasura a lecture about his past crimes, a hand suddenly materializes out of nowhere and wraps around Hyasura's throat. It's Narihisago's hand. He can still use the ID well's power perfectly. Hondamachi finally reveals the truth. It turns out that the chair Hyasura is sitting on isn't a chair at all. It's a disassembled cockpit. All this time, she has been holding the control panel. As Hyasura begins to beg for his life, she presses the enter button, sending him into the well within the well. Narihisago immediately smashes the control panel to ensure that no one can eject him by accident, trapping him inside forever. Now, the only thing left for Hondamachi and Narihisago to do is escape the well. Outside the well, Momoki enters the Kura's building to begin the rescue operation. He is equipped with a special suit designed to repel Asukai's power, protecting him from falling into a coma. However, her influence seems to have grown stronger, and the suit struggles to keep up. Regardless, it's the only choice they have. At one point, Momoki starts to lose his mind, and his brain function rapidly decreases. As their last resort, Matsuoka decides to inject Momoki with the mysterious drug they had confiscated from the hospital. At first, Momoki's body can't handle it, and he ends up losing vital signs. However, thanks to the suit's built-in CPR system, he is revived and manages to get back on his feet. A few moments later, Momoki finally finds Asukai. The moment their eyes meet, Asukai immediately recognizes Momoki as the person who saved her. She thinks Momoki is going to save her again, but to her surprise, he points his gun at her. Just as quickly, he tosses it aside. Before continuing their conversation, Momoki turns off his camera and mic so that Matsuoka and the other field analysts can't monitor the two of them. He then asks Asukai if she wants to run away from here, to a place where she can be alone, where her dreams can't reach anyone. But Asukai says it wouldn't work. Her nightmares have already started pulling in people from distant countries. There's nowhere left to run. Asukai then picks up the gun Momoki tossed and asks him to shoot her with it. That's the only way her suffering can end. But Momoki remains silent. Seeing no other way, she turns the gun on herself and pulls the trigger. However, nothing happens. The gun is empty. Momoki then explains that he can't do it because he's a police officer. As she's about to cry, Asukai comes to a realization that the only option left for her is to return to containment. That way, at least she can be of use to someone. She also admits that by being in deep sleep, she can forget her suffering. Momoki and Asukai finally walk toward the containment room. As Asukai slowly steps into the water, Momoki stops her one last time. He tells her that one day, someone who can truly save her will come. Someone who will free her from this endless pain. Suddenly, Kaoru has this vision of her meeting Sakaido in a well. He smiles, saying that it's the first time he sees her alive. Asukai then turns back to Momoki and tells him that she believes him, so she'll be waiting as long as it takes. In the end, she enters the water. At that moment, the barrier surrounding the building collapses, releasing the Mitsuhanome's hold. One by one, the employees begin to wake from their comas. As soon as the well-side members regain consciousness, they discover that Narihisago and Hondomachi are still alive in the well and immediately prepare to extract them. And with that, the John Walker case is finally closed once and for all. Hayasura's death is officially ruled as suicide, and the truth of Mizuhanome is concealed again. What happens in Kura stays in Kura. That's how the organization has always worked. At last, Narihisago and Hondomachi return to their roles as brilliant detectives, ready to step into the unknown once more. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.